Hello everyone and welcome back. So we've talked a lot about photography and how to get the best image possible, from how your camera works to applying certain skills in the field, all based on how to create the best image possible in any particular scene. Now we're going to move a little bit beyond that and we're going to start looking at post-processing. Everything from how to import your images to various edits. Now this is an endless subject and we're going to be adding videos to this segment inevitably. But for now we're going to concentrate on the basics, and that's cataloging and importing. We've taken our pictures and now we want to get them onto a computer to edit, to save, and to do it in an organized manner where we know how to find those images quickly and edit them and arrange them in the best way possible. So this is cataloging and importing. Enjoy. The first thing you have to do when you've taken your picture is quite obvious. You've got a memory card and you want to get those images onto your computer so you can start editing. Now what happens when you take this picture is certain metadata is stored to it. And this is not just for the purpose of you seeing what date you took the photograph or what time you took the photograph. Its greatest function is because of those dates and times. Is it because it allows us to arrange those images in a manner that's easy to organize and easy to understand. If we ever want to come back to an image, we know where it is and we know where to find it according to dates. Now, the primitive way was simply to drag and drop files off this onto a file on your computer, and then you'd edit them one by one through Lightroom or whatever post-processing software that you have. But there's a much better way of doing it, and we're going to go through that now. First, you've got to put the card into a card reader. Now, with card readers, there's so many cheap options and there's very expensive options. One thing I can say, if you buy cheap, you're going to struggle. Quite often cheap card readers can malfunction, especially in a big import. If you've got 1,000 images on here and you're trying to import them onto your computer, it can suddenly cancel the import halfway through, which can damage the card reader, in fact damage the card itself, and also risk losing those images. So buy a good quality card reader, you won't regret it. So let's put this thing in and let's go through the basics of importing and cataloging. The first thing you'll notice when you enter your card, a lot of the time Lightroom opens straight away because it assumes you want to do an import. Now if you haven't created a home file already, it's a little bit too early to get into Lightroom. So let me show you what I mean. So we close Lightroom. Now you can see your card icon shows up once you've entered the card. And what we're trying to do is get those pictures from that card icon onto an external hard drive. You should never really keep images on your laptop or your desktop. It takes up too much memory and your computer can slow down, especially when using post-processing software. So we want to store them on external hard drives, but we'll get onto hard drives and backing up files at a later stage. But for now, we want at least one just to get the images from the camera into a safe place that's easy to organize. So the first thing we need to do is create a home file. Now what a home file is, it's a file where all those physical raw files are going to sit outside of post-processing software. We need a place for them to be kept. So this is a file where we store the physical raw files. And as you can see, my hard drive's full of various files, but I've created a little file here called test. This is what we're going to use today. You can call this file anything: Uganda, Serengeti, Svalbard, Borneo, whatever destination you've been photographing in. You'd usually name this file off that destination, or you'd name it by the year, 2021, 2022. And then within that file, you will have the actual home files of that year per destination where these photographs are going to go. So for example, these photographs of Uganda 2018, they're going to go into this file. So we need to create this file before we start importing, because we need a place for our images to be imported to. And that brings us to the next step. Now that your card's inside the computer and it's reading it, you open Lightroom. And as you can see, the import window is already open because your computer has read the card is there and it's assuming that you want to import. But we have that home file created already. So there's various options you can use when importing images. But we're going to focus on the simplest one, which is the one I already use and I still use. I haven't complicated it because I know what I want from my images. I know what I don't want from my images. So my import process is very simple. Let's go into some of the options that you can use when doing this. If you look on the left-hand side, this is what you're importing from. And you'll notice our SD card shows up here. So this is where the images are now. They're on our SD card. If we click on that, all those images pop up in this window and they're all ticked currently. And now you've selected what you want to import. The next thing is where you want to import it to and how. So that's the use of the right-hand panel here. And you can see there's a few options. If we look down here, it says build smart previews. Now what smart previews are is they're quite useful. They build a very small resolution file of each image that you import, which means if your hard drive's not plugged in, you can still do edits on those images. And when you plug your hard drive in, they will write against the larger image, the larger file. So if you're in an airport and you don't want to take your hard drive out, smart previews are useful because you can just take your laptop out and start editing. But bear in mind, although they are small resolution, if you have lots and lots and lots of images, thousands of images, they do take up space and sometimes can overload your computer. So it's not essential that you have built smart previews ticked. It's just a nice convenience if you really want it. The next option is don't import suspected duplicates over here. If we click that, as you can see, some of these images have gone dark because I've previously imported them into Lightroom. Quite often what happens in the field is you import a few images onto your computer, you want to edit them quickly that night, but you're saving the big import for when you get home. The nice thing about this is you don't import them twice. It really recognizes the metadata on that image, knows that you've imported it already, and it won't let you import it again. The problem comes in is this can get quite disorganized. If you import some images from one day just to edit them on that specific day, and then later on you want to import the whole lot and put them in a home file, Lightroom will recognize that you've already imported some of those images. So you have to remove them off Lightroom or uncheck don't import suspected duplicates, which means you might get duplicates. The next option is make a second copy too. This is if you want to back up your images to another file, another home file on another hard drive, so that you've got more copies in case that hard drive crashes. Now this is not necessary again. You can do it through Lightroom like this, but the easiest thing is to just, once you've imported into that home file, just to drag and drop that home file onto another hard drive is the simplest way of doing it. So long as the home file destination for that specific file is in the right place and Lightroom can find it, the backup is not something you need to worry about in this process. The next option is add to file collection. Now, we'll talk about collections at another stage. It's a management process of Lightroom for organizing all your files so you know where they are and you can find each one easily. But like I said, we'll get into collections and folders at a later stage. All we want to do is get these images into Lightroom, and if we want them in a collection, we can always do it later. There's a few other options here, and like I said, we're dealing with the basics here, the easy and most effective way of importing files. So when it comes to file renaming, normally you don't touch this because the file's name is written to the date it was taken and the time. And that's a great way of organizing your files so you can find them again. So usually you don't touch anything here because it's already on date and file name, and that's where you want it to be. And once again, there's another option here called apply during import. This is stuff you want to apply to your images while you're importing them. You don't want to tick anything here. Very seldom. I don't know anyone who uses this, and I don't know why you would, especially in development settings. You want to develop carefully and precisely in Lightroom's develop module, not in the simplified version. And metadata here, you've already got the metadata that you need, date and time. For organizing your files, that is all you need. So you don't tick anything here or don't change anything in this window either. Now comes the important part, destination. Remember, we created a home file. We want our photographs to go into that home file. And this is why it's important to create that file before you import, because you need to decide here where you want the files to import to. And by doing it through Lightroom means that through Lightroom, you have access to those files and you can edit them freely. So we want to find those two files. We don't need to tick into subfolder. We want them to go into that specific folder. And it's already selected to organize by date. That's what we want. That's how we can find these things easier. We can remember what date we were in a certain place, and we know what photographs we took on that date, so we can find a particular photograph easy. So you don't need to change anything here. This comes standard. So that file we created was on our hard drive called favorites. Now if I look in favorites, the home file we created was called test. So all we've got to do is find test somewhere here. Over here, open test up, and as you can see, our home file is right there. We want to click on that, and as you can see, it creates its own subfiles according to dates. This is the joy of Lightroom. It creates these subfiles according to the date, which further organizes our files so we can find certain images much easier. Now we've told the computer we're importing from that card into this destination in this way, and the import process is that easy. We don't need it complicated anymore. Now the last thing to do is deciding what images on that card you want to import. Usually when you come back from the field, you want to import everything onto that same place in that same format. I don't want to do that now because I've already got all these images on my computer, and this is just as a test. So I can uncheck all and just take several for the sake of learning, just like that. Once we've decided on the images that we want to import, all we have to do now is click import. Now that the images have imported, you can see that this little window comes up saying smart previews have been created for these images. We've already spoken about what smart previews are, so all you have to do is click OK. Now I've imported a few videos. I don't want videos in Lightroom. Lightroom doesn't like dealing with videos. It's not video software, although it can help you organize them, and that is it. For editing, they're not supposed to be there, but if you want to use but if you want to use Lightroom to organize those videos, you can. So now we've effectively completed the import process. If you look now, if I close Lightroom and we look inside this folder, test, remember we created the home file before, over here. If we look inside test over here and we find Uganda 2018, this is the home file we created before we started importing. You can see it's created files according to dates. Now I pulled photographs from one day here, so it's only going to create one file of the particular date, but all our photographs exist now in that file. So if we've completed the import process, everything is on a file on our hard drive. But the nice thing about using Lightroom is Lightroom recognizes where they are. So you don't have to import photographs every time you come into Lightroom. Lightroom remembers where those photographs are and stores that metadata so you can find it easily. The last thing we're going to look at today is cataloging. We've brought those files from an SD card onto a hard drive through Lightroom. Lightroom knows where they are, but now we can further organize our files within Lightroom so we can access them nice and quick. And that's where folders and collections come in. Let's have a look at what we mean. The first option here is folders. Now folders are actual physical files. So we created a home file called Uganda 2018 and we've imported those photographs into that file. That is what a folder is. It's actual files on your hard drive that photographs exist in. And you can alter the destination of those files from Lightroom and it will change from Lightroom. So if I go down to test the file that we've created and I find Uganda 2018, you can see that file shows up here. There's Uganda 2018, there's 2021, and there's the specific date and all the files that we imported. The thing about folders, if I move one of these files into another folder, it will move it on that hard drive into that same folder. To show you what I mean, if I take this image and I drag it and I drop it into this file, for example, that's another home file that serves a different purpose. This is photographs of myself that I've captured in the field. Just for example's sake, if I drag this file and put it over there, you'll see this option comes up, moving a file on a disk, which means it's actually going to move the location of that file, which means you've got to be careful because sometimes Lightroom won't be able to find it again. But if you do it through folders, Lightroom will know the location. If you do it on your hard drive just by dragging and dropping, Lightroom won't know where it is and you'll get a message saying file cannot be found. So if I say move, that file's moved. You can see now it's no longer in 2018, it's no longer in 2021. There's only 5 images left here and that image is not there. If I close Lightroom and I go into that file that I dragged it into, I think it was called me, this one over here, we'll see that image pops up. Where is it? Right there. So you can see the image that we dragged and dropped from Uganda pops up in that file. So you can physically move those files around using folders. Now that's just a nice nifty way of keeping track of where certain files are. But usually when you create a home file, you seldomly change where those files exist, their destination. They stay in that home file. So it's very seldom we go through folders to move files around. Not at this stage in your photographic career. The next thing we're going to look at is collections. Now most people use collections to organize their files, but in various ways. And again, it's a matter of simply dragging and dropping and creating collections. If I create a new collection here, I click on this, I create collection. Let's call it test, like our home file. Test, create collection, don't worry about ticking any of that stuff. As you can see, it's created a collection called test. Now, we have the ability to move files into these collections, but it doesn't move the actual destination of that file like folders do. It stays in that home file, doesn't move no matter what collection we pull it into. This is Lightroom specific. These are folders within Lightroom. They don't affect the original destination of the file. So these can be many things. You can label them favorites. You can label them the best of a certain trip, like the best shots I took in the Serengeti. Or like I've done is I've labeled them destination specific and time specific. As you can see, I've got Tswalu here. I've got Uganda 2018. I've got Zambia 2018. I've got all these different collections that I drag and drop files into. So if we go into our catalog up here, now the catalog is something you seldom change anything with. It simply shows all your photographs, or synced photographs that might be synced with another platform, or synced errors, quick collection, which is something that we're not going to get into just now because I don't think it's that necessary, and your previous import. If I click on previous import, you can see all the files that I previously imported with you are all sitting here. If I want all of those in the collection, you can select them all, Command A, go down to the collection that we've made already called test, and I can simply drag and drop those files into test. Now if I open test, all these files come up. If I open Tanzania, all these files come up here. They're all filled with different images. Again, you can create as many collections as you want. You can have sub-collections over here. As you can see, Ethiopia has sub-collections. Ethiopia was divided into 3 different places. So I've got Lalibela, I've got Omo Valley, and I've got Simien Mountains, because they're all very different. So you can create as many collections as you want and drag and drop and organize your files as you please. The difference here is if I go outside of Lightroom and back into the test file, over here, if I go into Uganda 2021, those images are still here. It's not like folders. It doesn't move the original destination. It just moves them within Lightroom and helps you organize them with Lightroom. So collections are a very useful way of organizing your files. The last thing we're going to look in Lightroom is numbering and color marking your images. This is the last way we try and organize our files to make it easier to find what we want. Numbering and coloring is great for giving particular value to certain images. If it's really good or if it's really shit, you give it different numbers or different colors. Now, personally, I never use colors. It just gets too difficult. You've got 2s and then you've got reds that are 2s and greens that are 2s, or you've got 3s and it just gets a little bit too much. So for now, let's just stick to what they mean and use them as you please. Either use numbers or use colors, but I wouldn't recommend using both at this stage. And what this means is if I'm in a group of photographs like this and I click on one, I've got 1 to 5, the numbers 1 to 5 on my keyboard. If I click 1, you can see it's rated to 1. If I click 2, it's rated to 2. And this is a star value, so I'm giving it 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, all the way up to 5 star. 5 star would obviously be your favorite images. 3 star, you're not sure of. 1 star goes to the trash. And where this comes in handy is if I've clicked 1 star and the image is 1 star, I come up to here in the attribute section and I click attribute, and then you can see colors and star values come up. If you want to search all your images that are 1 star, you can click on 1 star over here and you can see your image pops up right there. You can adjust the rating here and usually leave it on rating is equal to. It makes it a bit easier to use. And now all your 1 star images come up. And if it really is trash, it means you can select all the images that you've labeled 1 star in your organizational process and send them all to the trash. Now, if I were to send it all to the trash, I right click on it and remove photo from Lightroom, or if there's lots of photos, I'll highlight all of them. And the same goes that if there were 5 stars. If I click on my 5 star, I don't know if I have any 5 star values. Let's mark a few in my photographs. Let's say that's a 5 star and that's a 5 star. Oh, I mark that as red. And that's a 5 star, and that's a 5 star, and that's a 5 star. Now, if I go into attributes and I want to find my favorite photographs, I've clicked on 5 star. If I click on 4 star images come up. I haven't used any 4 star image. I haven't used any 4 star ratings at the moment. Once I've rated my images, I usually remove the rating because I've only kept my favorites. But if I wanted to find my favorites, I click on 5 star. And the same thing goes for colors. Now your colors are accessed by the numbers on your keyboard as well. 6, 7, 8, and so on. So if I click 6, it will mark it as red. If I select this image and click 7, it marks it as yellow. If I select this image and click 8, it marks it as green. If I go up into my attributes again, and I want to find all my reds, I click on the red. Now, you can see nothing's come up because I've still got 5 stars, and this is why I say it gets a little bit too complicated. I've still got 5 stars clicked over here, which means it's looking for 5 star images in the red category, which gets a little bit too complicated. The stars alone are enough to mark your images, what's not good or what is good. So if I click off those stars, you can see the red value comes up there, but it's not rated 5 stars. So that's why it wasn't working at first. If I click on 5 stars again, it goes away because it's not got a 5 star rating. So at this stage, I highly suggest just sticking to the star rating. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stars. To be honest, I would stick to 1, 3, and 5. 5, great image, I know it's a great image, I want to work on it later. 3, I'm not sure, I'll check later. And 1 is trash. And that's it. There's nothing really you need in between. So that's the basics of importing and cataloging. That's a great foundation to start organizing your files. There's a lot of ways we can get complicated with this, but that's the method I've been using. It's simple, it works, it's never failed me, and I'm sure it won't fail you. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next chapter.